Alright everyone, a few days ago Gateway Pundit was blocked from Google News. As Google News doesn't determine whether you appear in general search, but if you go to the News tab, there are certain firms that are aggregated there, and it actually is helpful. Google News has been a fairly good aggregator. I prefer 4chan at this point. But generally it does a good job. There are some, out there more independent sites that are aggregated there. I think they blocked like InfoWars forever and everything. I can't imagine they aggregate them now after all of the rigmarole over the last few months. But now Gateway Pundit is gone. I'm thinking to myself, Gateway Pundit is generally considered somewhat reliable. Like, some of the stuff there is definitely hyperbolic. It's like, oh my god, Roger Stone has evidence that'll destroy the deep state or something. Okay, given. But what about Salon? Salon appears there. Look at all the weird shit they write. What about Vox? Or even Huffington Post, which is sort of a more lamestream leftist site than certainly Vox or maybe The Verge or something. And so you've got all of this material here, and I'm thinking the purpose of Google News as an aggregator is to be able to go through simply and find material. News junkies use it. People who are into politics. I use it to an extent. Again, though it's secondary at this point. I use Google News sometimes when I need to look for news on certain topics. You pop in Venezuela, here's a bunch of stories, then you can choose where it's from. I'm less likely to do that, though, especially as a news junkie, though, if I don't believe that I'm actually getting the full picture of news. I'd rather use a different aggregation service if that's going to happen. And so I'm not sure exactly why Google would choose to do this. Breitbart breaks the story after Gateway Pundit itself complains, and apparently I can't remember exactly what excuse was given. Link in the description, you can read through that. But it sounded kind of like bullshit to me. And I think it had something to do with false advertising or something. And it's like, this sort of thing actually happens, and it's rather interesting when it does. Sometimes people they'll get flagged down or whatever, inconvenienced in some way, and it doesn't even really make sense. It's like when YouTube banned InfoWars. They didn't do it based on, well, they violated our TOS on like hate speech or something. That was what Facebook and Twitter and some of these other sites did when they were mass deplatforming InfoWars, Jones, and everyone associated with them. YouTube took up a different approach. They did it a few hours later and they said, oh no, it had nothing to do with that. It came to our attention that they were basically ban jumping because their original account wasn't allowed to stream, and yet they were using this backup service. They weren't supposed to be posting during this 2-week period or whatever, and so they had a second channel. Now, were they told, by the way, by YouTube, did they send them an email saying, okay, any alternate accounts, don't post there either for 2 weeks, otherwise you're in violation of our rules? I doubt that they were. A little bit of an oversight. Maybe that should be clarified because a lot of people have second channels. I know, like it's, Sargon has the Thinkery and so forth. It's quite interesting. Some people have an archival channel, or they have a channel they do political commentary, then they do gaming streams or something. They do it on a totally different presence. I choose not to do that generally. I like to keep it all in one place. Just sort of, because I can remember the days when I don't think you were supposed to have more than one YouTube channel years and years ago. It just sort of sticks with you. Yeah, I'm from the old guard. I'm getting a little bit off topic, but still an interesting sub-subject. I think that Gateway Pundit should be back on there. Again, we're talking about a site that sometimes has some hyperbolic content. But we're not exactly... this isn't a site even as edgy as like InfoWars or something. I think RT is still on their aggregator. How is it any different? Yeah, there's certainly some disinfo there, but if you're looking for disinfo or false advertising or clickbait or something, man, there shouldn't be anything on Google News. What do you think the name of the game of MSNBC is at this point? Or even like Fox News. Every other Fox News story is some great big crazy ass headline. Have you watched their shitty TV show? With the swinging lights and the trumpets and blaring drums and everything else. Oh my god. Dang. Oh, here's the story of the century. Oh, duck walking across the road. Oh, it's pretty cute. Now back to the headline news. Here's your weather today. There's a tornado coming. Everybody's going to die. You get hyperbolic stuff like that because that's what entertainment news, it's all it is. In the wake of, certainly, there are several things that kill off the old format of news. It basically doesn't exist anymore. Fox News is part of it. A big part of it. Fox News comes into existence, realizes, hey, MTV generation style news is going to be great. We're going to make it more fast-paced. We're going to have the blaring lights, and cameras are going to swing around wildly. We're going to have, roundtable discussions that we openly encourage to become vicious. And it was more interesting. They quickly shoot to the top because of that, because of some of this programming. What ends up happening with all the other networks? They just copy it. Oh, we can do that too. Yeah, we'll have our own vicious roundtable discussions. Only where Johnny come lately is it's 2 or 3 years later, and we're still catching up. That's what the whole legacy media is doing online. It's very difficult for them to compete with firms that have almost no overhead at all. Some of these sites, like Salon has fiscal problems. They don't even have the mass budget. Can you imagine the kind of budget that like CNN and Fox operate with? Or something, the New York Times with their offices? Salon is like what, 20, 30 people maybe, or something like that, and that's still inefficient enough. Then you have news organizations that they have a couple of freelance journos that feed them stories for, freelance cash once in a while, and then it's basically just they have a janitor and a couple cubicles or something. Then you have the new class of independent commentary that's just one person in their home office with a fucking webcam. How's the New York Times going to compete with them? Take a dartboard, okay? Put the names of the top 1,000 or so commentators up on there and throw a dozen darts up there and then add up their total audiences. I bet it's bigger than CNN. That's saying quite something. But no, I mean, Google News has been a good aggregator, but once it starts algorithmically demoting or shifting around content or kicking people off of that aggregation service, which Facebook has done too, by the way, based on the fact that, false advertising, when it's clearly not a case of that, it's being done for probably political reasons, that's a reason not to use the service. Again, it's like Google search has been algorithmically manipulated to a heavy extent. A lot of people have started using, they either unskew it with either use Start Page or DuckDuckGo. I don't. Or they've switched to like Bing or something, in all honesty, and I know there are others as well. You can recommend a few. I interchange. Sometimes I have to use Google for certain image searching, because the one problem with Bing is it'll only load a few pages of results usually. And so it can become a little bit of a problem. It's not quite as expansive for many categories of search. Yeah, I mean, come on, you're a news aggregator. Again, there's no onus on Google to be a moral actor and kick a bunch of sites off because they have wrongthink or something. That's a bullcrap fantasy that's been invented by a bunch of political partisans, usually well within the neoliberal mainstream, to try to justify censorship. That's about all. Peace out.